Good morning. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper, and I'm here today with Jon Harari, the CEO of WindowsWear. Good afternoon in your case, Jon. How you doing?
Hey, great. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us today. So to start with, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Sure. So my name is Jon Harari, CEO and co-founder of WindowsWear. Born and raised right outside Washington, D.C. I went to college, Indiana University. Right after Indiana University, moved to New York City, worked in finance, worked at Lehman Brothers in investment banking, worked at a hedge fund as an investment analyst. And for the past 10 years, been doing entrepreneurial things. This is my second company, WindowsWear. Two other co-founders, Mike Nimzel, Raul Tovar, and we've got a great team of people in New York as well as people all around the world, and we've got lots of clients globally, so it's fantastic.
Well, that leads me to my next question. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as a remote employee and a remote employer, which you obviously are?
Yeah, look, so, I mean, for me personally, it's been great. We've been able to work remotely, figure out everyone on and within the organization how to continue to do what we do wherever we're at. And that's ultimately the heart and soul of our company, that no matter where we're physically located at, we can all connect and we can all do our jobs effectively.
Brilliant. So where is the farthest away person that works for you?
So we have a whole content team globally. And we have people working remotely. And, you know, ultimately, we're also a membership. You know, we're a membership community. So we have tens of thousands of members. Currently, we're at 21,000 members of WindowsWear.com. And just like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, you know, once you become a member of those sites, you also contribute to the community. And contributing to the community is part of what makes you engage with others. And we live in a digitally connected world where there are people all around us, and we still have the opportunities to share, connect, and engage with each other online.
Very interesting. So what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
So I think that's an interesting question. If you look back historically, we always worked where we lived. And it was only the Industrial Revolution, a little over 100 years ago, that introduced the urbanization of the workforce. And it was at that time when the technology was electricity. That was like the internet boom or the app boom or the, you know, social media age of its time, right? That's the thing that brought people together. And ultimately, they had to physically go, right? So you went from your rural environment, you went from your home, and you went to a, I guess, shared workspace or an office. Back then, there was a lot of factories, obviously, with manufacturing. Now we're in more of a service level economy, right? So that means we provide services to each other, and traditionally, that's being done in places like office buildings, and there are headquarters for those buildings. So I'm in New York City, and this whole city used to be a manufacturing center where people, you know, came here from wherever they came from, within the U.S. as well as, you know, outside the U.S. And they had to physically come here in order to work. And it was the first time ever that human beings left their homes to actually pursue their own careers and a livelihood. So I fundamentally believe that working back at home, you know, working wherever you're at, that's just going back to our roots. And if you look historically at humankind and the way that we worked and where we worked, we always worked from our homes. We always worked in our communities. We didn't venture too far away from where we are physically at, and we're just going back to that. And technology is allowing us the ability to do that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. I've really never thought about that, but you're right. Back in 100 years ago, you know, that's the way it was. They didn't have big office buildings.
Exactly. So, you know, and I always like to look at the historical aspects of everything that we do, because when you actually look back, it's no different than where we are today. It's just that today we have even more opportunities and more tools and more forms to be and stay connected. And And I think it's all up to all of us to take advantage of what we've got at our moment in time, because when you look back, you're like, wow, they didn't really have what we have. So, imagine being, living and working back then, so.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with cities like New York, where you are, and San Francisco, where I am, because there's a lot of people in a small space.
Correct. And that trend has been taking place for, San Francisco 150 years with the gold rush and the east and west sort of connection between the railroads and, and really making America the whole continent from Atlantic to Pacific. And same thing with New York, and it's been hundreds of years of this. And I think things are, if you think about 100 years of it going up, now we're slightly going down. It's not quite dramatic. It might seem like it's dramatic, but if you look historically, it's not that dramatic.
Yeah, that's true. So what is the story behind WindowsWear? What is your product? Who are the people that are members? All those things. Yeah,
so we're a competitive resource for brands. So what every brand wants to know is what every other brand is doing. It's no different than doing research about anything. So for instance, let's say you want to look up a movie, right? You can go to Netflix and you can scroll through all the options. If you're interested, in movies, you can go to IMDb, right? If you want to buy a home, there are a lot of resources online like Zillow that provide what does every home look like? What are the price history, like where it's located? Think about all that information at your fingertips, and envision not having that information, right? How inefficient it would be to sort of do fun things like look for movies and look for homes and things like that. And so we're a B2B resource for brands to do the same exact thing about other brands. So a brand, let's say Nike, creates so many things. Nike creates products, and Nike creates engagement with the products. So the product is the sneaker. And you can just envision all the thousands of products every year, all the makes, the models that Nike creates, right? And that's relatively easy to capture because everyone's got an e-commerce website. You can collect, you can catalog all the products that they're putting out there. Now, what's more difficult to capture is how is Nike engaging with the consumer, both on and offline? And what I mean by that is, what are all the Nike stores look like? What are all the Nike window displays look like? What are all the pop-up shops of Nike? What's the packaging of Nike, like the actual product packaging? What's the experiences that Nike is creating all around the world? And then if you look online, what are all the Nike social media posts, right? And if you think about that, it's Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. What's the Nike e-commerce site look like? What's the Nike website presence look like? There are all these aspects of a brand's identity and the creation of a brand and the maintenance of a brand that is constantly being created and recreated. And with technology, there's even more channels. So way back in the day, for a retailer, in order for them to sell their products, they sell it through a market, a physical location within a village or a city or a town that everyone congregated to look at all the options that were available within that market. Now that's like flipped on its head. Now technology allows us to be anywhere and shop from anywhere. And if you're a brand, you want to know what other brands are doing through all those different channels. And all that is competitive research. It's all data, it's all information. And we put it together at people's fingertips, just like IMDb captures all the movies from all around the world and puts it at people's fingertips. Same way that Zillow captures all the homes all around the country and all the prices and puts it at people's fingertips. We do the same thing, but it's more visual because obviously everything that I'm describing is visual and how brands are communicating is visual. So it's a lot of basically like Pinterest, but for retail. It's like Google Earth for retail. And it's a resource for creatives that work at brands to really get really good insights as far as what other brands are doing all around the world.
Wow, that's got to be a lot of data. I would like to summarize. I would think it sounds like Nike and Adidas would both be members, and they both update your site, so they both know what each other's doing.
everyone does competitive research.
Yeah.
No matter what industry that you're in, you know, everyone's doing the competitive research, but then for the retail industry, no one's created the competitive research company, which is WindowsWear. So, you know, if you're like, you know, if I would say to you, hey, I'm creating a database of movies, you'd be like, why are you doing that? There's IMDb, there's Netflix, there's plenty of databases that exist for movies. We're just doing it for all the brands that are also creating. They're just creating other things, and they create it so quickly that if you're not capturing it at that moment, you're losing the information. And ultimately, before WindowsWear, there's a lot of content that was created way back in the day that is actually lost in history. Because like, what did Nike stores look like in 1972? You know, it's like, how do you find that information? If WindowsWear was on boots on the ground at that moment, we could capture all that content. So
very interesting. So how did you incorporate the idea of remote at your company? It sounds like you are global, so you had to almost be remote from day one. Is that true?
Yeah, day one. Yeah, day one, because we have a whole content team all around the world. So it's, you know, they have to capture content. So that means working with people remotely, utilizing technologies to be able to work with people no matter where they're at. And that also gives a lot of freedom to people, you know, that some people think, oh, being connected, you know, to your phone or to your office is painful because you're always connected to work. But also when you look historically, you never had any, not, you know, if you're in a family environment and you're working for your family, there's never a moment where you're disconnected from work. You know, if you look back historically with an agricultural society or different types of societies, that never existed. You were always connected with work. Everything was work. And, you know, we just have better tools now to continue to do that.
Yeah, that's true. So in the current situation, the pandemic forced everybody to go remote, basically in mid-March. It sounds like you already were prepared for it, but did that cause any roadblocks or challenges that you didn't quite expect?
Yes and no. I mean, you know, there are definitely challenges. So for instance, if you're in a physical environment, you have a quick question, you just tap your colleague on the shoulder and you get the information immediately. Now that process is a little bit more annoying. I've got to call you, I've got to text you. It's more intrusive. You know, if we're in the same room and you have a question, you just say it. You know, now in order to ask that question, you have to take additional steps. That's the challenge, the little stuff, but and also, you know, regularly connecting. So there's a lot of things that we implemented to make sure that we're regularly scheduling calls and meetings, whereas we wouldn't necessarily have needed to do that before because we're all in the same room or we're all in the same physical location. There's no need to, you know, consistently let people know that we're doing a regular meeting because everyone's just there. So, so we've had to adapt in those ways. But, you know, pretty much our business has been set up for, you know, for the current world that we live in. And obviously with what's happened with COVID, it's only accelerated that.
Yeah. And it sounds like you did have an office in New York. You probably still do. It's just people don't go there now, correct?
Well, you know, quite frankly, there are people that live with roommates. There's people that physically work from their house and they just need a different environment. And I get that. I absolutely get that. So, you know, we still have the office, we're still maintaining it. And because we determined as a team, it's still important for there to be a physical place that people can go to. And at the same time, you know, we're not necessarily making it mandatory. It's there. And there are also some people that use it and, you know, it's still good to have, but, you know, at the same time, we're all pretty much working remotely from that sense. It's not like we're working in the same way that we used to.
Yeah. So last question, there are companies like Gaper that help build, develop and scale products, especially for startups. How important do you think that will be going forward, especially for a company like you that's global, that needs, you know, a certain talent and they need it in a hurry?
Yeah, I mean, that's on the leading edge of services for our world and our future world. So, you know, absolutely.
Yes. So, well, Jon, I want to thank you for your time today. It's been interesting. You're the first person I've talked to that's brought up the historical perspective of this, which was really quite interesting. So
thank you so much. Yeah, I watch lots and lots and lots of documentaries. So in my brain, I see what's going on right now, but I also like have images of like 150 years ago, 200 years ago, and it's like, nope, you can't tell me this is a bad situation. It's just not factually correct if you look at things in different ways. So yeah, no, I appreciate that, and obviously I love New York City, so I also love the way that people have figured out how to work in New York as well, because you have a lot of human beings that have been thrown together in a densely populated society, and people just figure it out, which I love.
they do, yes. I've actually lived there twice, so I do know.
Nice.
It's a unique city, and so is my city, San Francisco.
Absolutely, I love San Fran as well. San Fran's got lots of great qualities, and obviously that's the home of Silicon Valley, which a lot of everything that you're describing is like the birthplace of it, right? So
yes. So, well, thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks so much.
All right, bye.
Bye.